Every night at around 1:18, my TV switches to channel 666. I don't really know how to explain this, and I don't even know what it is. Story 1. I wouldn't even be using the damn thing if it weren't for the circumstances. My grandma passed away a few weeks ago, and I inherited her house. I've been staying here while I fix the place up, patching walls, sorting through decades of her things, trying not to think too much about how empty it feels without her. She never upgraded anything, not even the television. It's one of those heavy old sets that looks like it belongs in a museum, with faux wood paneling and dials that only go up to 99. The first night I stayed here, I turned it on just for the background noise. I figured it wouldn't even work without cable or an antenna, but at 1:18 the picture flickered, and the channel number jumped to something that shouldn't exist. At first, it almost looked normal, a grainy black and white feed, the kind of washed-out broadcast you'd expect to see if you dug up some old VHS tape from the 70s. A man in a dark suit stood behind a pulpit, sweat shining on his forehead, his voice booming even though the sound was fuzzy. He was preaching. I couldn't make out all the words at first, something about sin and salvation, but the cadence was unmistakable. Every so often, though, he would stumble. His mouth would keep moving, but the words that came out didn't make sense. One moment he was talking about the blood of the Lamb, and the next he was saying, Revelation tells us, let him who has understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, 666, 666. But I tell you, brethren, do not think of it as only a number. No, it is a sign, a mark upon the hours etched into the turning of the clock, a signal, a light in the darkness, and it does not fade. Then just like that, he snapped back into rhythm, quoting from John as if nothing had happened. I actually laughed when I first heard it. Not out loud, but one of those nervous little huffs you make when something doesn't sit right. I told myself it was just late-night paranoia, that I was mishearing it through the static. Old sermons get dramatic and preachers use a lot of metaphors. A mark upon the hours could have just been flowery language, right? That's what I told myself. But the way he said it stuck with me. He didn't fumble over the words. He didn't pause. It wasn't a mistake. It was smooth, rehearsed, like he'd been waiting to slip it in. Behind him sat a congregation. At first, I didn't notice anything strange. Just rows of men and women in their Sunday best, hands folded in their laps, staring straight ahead. But the longer I watched, the more it felt like they weren't listening to him at all. They were looking through the screen. Their eyes were too steady. And then I saw her. Third row, aisle seat. My grandmother. Or at least that's what my brain told me. I froze. I leaned closer to the screen, blinking hard, waiting for the image to blur or shift back into just some random old woman. But it didn't. Same hair, same glasses, the same slight tilt of her head she always had when she was listening to someone speak. It couldn't have been her. She was gone. I'd stood at her funeral. I'd carried the bag of her ashes home in the backseat of my car. My hands were shaking, and I actually muttered out loud, "It's not her. It's not her." Like saying it would change what I was seeing. The longer I stared, the more it felt like she was staring back. Not at the preacher, not at the congregation, at me, straight through the screen. I don't know how long I sat there before the picture dissolved back into static. All I remember is the hollow feeling in my stomach and my heart pounding against my ribs. It hasn't just been a one-off glitch. Tonight will be the fourth night in a row. The first time I thought I was imagining things. The screen flipped at 1:18, the sermon played for maybe 5 minutes, then static. The next night, same thing. Different sermon, different passages. The preacher always looks the same suit, same sweat on his forehead, but the words are never the same. He stumbles every time, though. Each night there's a slip, something that doesn't belong in scripture, something that sounds like it was meant for me. I've timed it now. It lasts just under 5 minutes. I don't touch the TV, I don't change the channel. It just cuts out at 118 sharp, jumps straight to channel 66, then dies again like nothing happened. I told myself I'd leave it alone, that I wouldn't turn the TV on tonight, but I know I'm going to. I can't not. That's why I'm posting here before it happens again, just so someone else knows this is real. Maybe someone can give some suggestions before it's time. Hey, sorry it took me a little while to post again. Between the funeral planning, calls with family, and sorting through this house, I just didn't have the headspace to sit down and write. But the thing on the TV hasn't stopped, and honestly, the longer I wait to put it into words, the worse it feels. Like if I let it stay unspoken, it'll just sink deeper into me. I found an old VCR in the back of the hall closet covered in dust and still tangled in a yellowing extension cord. Took me half the evening to figure out how to wire it into the TV, but I got it going just before 1. I wanted something more permanent than my phone, something that couldn't glitch, couldn't just miss what I was seeing. The tape clicked into place, the red light came on, and I left it to run while I sat in the dark waiting for the minute hand to slide forward. At exactly 118, the static shivered and parted, and there was the preacher again. Same pulpit, same dark backdrop, the same crowd sitting rigid like dolls that had been arranged. His voice filled the room, warm and steady, but wrong in a way I can't explain. He was talking about the blood that cleanses, speaking in a calm, rolling rhythm, until he veered without warning. And the blood is not only for the cleansing of sin, but for the keeping open of the gate. He didn't pause. He didn't correct himself. He just kept going as though nothing strange had been said at all. My eyes scanned the congregation automatically, and my stomach twisted when I found her again. Third row, aisle seat, my grandmother. I could see her better this time. She wasn't staring blankly forward like the others. Her head tilted just slightly, like she was straining to listen for something behind her. The angle caught the light, and for an instant her mouth seemed too dark, too deep, like it was hollowed out. That's when I noticed it. Back in the corner, past the last row where the shadows drowned most of the pews, something was sitting apart from the others. Not upright like a churchgoer, but slouched forward. Its back was arched unnaturally, hands dangling loosely between its knees as though it didn't know how to hold them. Its skin was pale gray, wet-looking, stretched tight enough across the bones that it seemed ready to tear. And the head. God, the head. Too long. The face drooped, jaw slack, lips drawn back from teeth that were too many, too sharp, like shards wedged into the gums. When the preacher spoke, its mouth moved too, matching him at first, then opening wider, wider, until it looked like the entire bottom half of its skull would split away. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I don't even remember the rest of the sermon. I just stared, waiting for it to look at me. And when the broadcast ended, when the screen collapsed back into static, I was shaking hard enough that I nearly dropped the tape pulling it out. I rewound it right away. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely hit play. And of course, just like before, all that came through was snow. No pulpit, no congregation, no hunched figure, just static, with a faint wet crackle buried underneath, like someone breathing through water. I turned the volume up until the hiss filled the room, and I swear I could hear something underneath it. Not words, not fully, but the shape of them, like syllables being formed in a mouth that didn't belong on this side. I shut it off before I could make sense of it. Now I can't stop thinking about the thing in the back pew, about the way it didn't look at the pulpit or the preacher or even the congregation. It sat there, jaw yawning open wider than anything should, and it was looking straight at the camera, straight at me. I don't know what to do anymore. I thought writing this down would help me process it, but all it's doing is making me realize how far this has already gone. I can't explain why the tape shows nothing but static. I can't explain why my grandmother is there, and I sure as hell can't explain that thing in the corner. I'm out of ideas. If anyone has any advice, anything at all, I need to hear it because I don't think I can handle another night of just sitting here waiting for it to happen again. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm scared all the time. I can't sleep. I can't think. I can't even look at the TV without feeling like my chest is about to cave in. Please, if anyone knows what this is or what I should do, I need help. I'm writing this because I don't know where else to turn. It feels like I'm being hunted inside my own home, and the worst part is I can't prove it, no matter how many times I try. That night, the broadcast was waiting for me the second I turned the TV on. The static didn't roll or hiss like normal. It snapped into place like it had teeth of its own, then parted to reveal the pulpit again. The preacher's voice rang through the speakers in broken waves. Words stretched and bent until they no longer sounded like words at all. My grandmother was in the front pew, her hands folded tight, her head lowered in perfect stillness. I leaned closer without meaning to, my stomach sinking before I even knew why. The lights in the living room began to flicker in rhythm with the television. One long blink, one short, again and again, syncing with the distortions on the screen. Behind her, something moved. At first, just a shadow, a wrongness draped in human shape, but then it stepped forward and the wrongness sharpened into detail. It was tall enough to bow the ceiling beams, its skin a shifting film of gray and black that pulsed like wrought on water. Its eyes were two spirals burning inward, pulling all the light around them. Its arms hung too long, fingers dragging along the pews until the wood groaned under their weight. It leaned over her. My grandmother's head tilted back, her jaw hanging slack as though her strings had been cut. No sound came out, just the bubbling hiss of static pouring from her throat in sync with the speakers. Then the creature smiled at me. Not at her, not at the preacher, at me. Its mouth split open and kept splitting, lips peeling back until there was no face, only rows upon rows of teeth packed like glass needles into flesh that quivered when it grinned. The lights above me flickered faster, buzzing until I thought they might burst, and for one moment I swore I heard its breath rattling not from the TV, but from the corner of my living room. When it ended, I scrambled for my phone. I tried to record it. I needed proof. I needed something to show anyone else that this wasn't just in my head. But when I played it back, it wasn't there. No pulpit, no preacher, no demon, just a still image of static frozen in place no matter how many times I replayed it. I recorded again and again until my hands cramped, but every single time it was the same. The broadcast erased itself, leaving me with nothing. That was the worst part. I couldn't share it, couldn't convince anyone, couldn't even look at it afterward to prove to myself it had really happened. I barely slept that night. Every shadow across the wall seemed to ripple if I stared too long, like the picture tube glow was bleeding out of the screen into the corners of my house. The flicker of the streetlight outside sent me bracing for the hum of the broadcast to start on its own. My phone would light up with nothing, the air would feel thick and heavy, and for a few seconds at a time I swore I could hear the faint hiss of static coming from somewhere behind me. By the next evening I was a wreck, but I still turned the TV back on. I told myself I wouldn't, that I'd leave it off and try to pretend none of this was real, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know what the fuck was happening. Some part of me felt like if I didn't watch, whatever it was would simply step closer in the dark, where I couldn't see. And it did. The static broke cleanly, the pulpit swimming into view, the preacher's hands slamming against the wood as his voice thundered about blood and fire and the trumpets of heaven. But this time the thing wasn't behind my grandmother. It was standing directly behind him. It loomed over the pulpit, its body twisted so that every limb bent at an angle it shouldn't. Its spine jutted in sharp ridges like it was wearing a crown of bones down its back. The skin across its chest rippled and split as though something underneath was clawing to get out. Its head hung just over the preacher's shoulder, those spiral eyes locked not on him but on me. The preacher's voice droned on, oblivious, his mouth working soundlessly while the creature breathed against his ear. Every flick of its tongue, every twitch of its jaw, made its teeth glisten, layer after layer, tens of rows stretching back into a black pit where a throat should have been. It didn't smile this time. It only stared, unblinking, its entire body angled toward me like it was waiting for me to understand something. The preacher's words had become nothing but low vibrations under the sound of my heartbeat. The flicker of the lights above me synced again with the television until the whole house seemed to pulse with it. The longer I sat there, the more I was sure it wasn't behind the preacher at all. The edges of the frame seemed closer, as if the camera itself had taken a step forward. The spirals in its eyes spun inward, and for a heartbeat I felt that same slow drag inside my chest, like something leaning closer to my ear, like something waiting to see if I would blink first. I don't even know how to start this. The broadcast. It's over, and the TV is just a broken old set again. The screen is shattered, the glass jagged, the inside empty like always, nothing but the hollow box of an old TV. But I know what I just saw. I can't shake it. My hands are still trembling, my chest won't stop tightening, and every corner of this room feels wrong. I know it isn't over yet. I can feel it. I just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm scared. When the broadcast began tonight, Stan was sitting beside me. He didn't believe me. Not fully, but after the things I told him, the static, the preacher, my grandmother in the pew, he agreed to come over. The screen snapped on at 1:18 sharp, and the moment the preacher opened his mouth, Stan went pale. He grabbed my arm, whispering, "What the hell is this?" like he'd stepped into something he couldn't get out of. The preacher's words slowed, dragged down like a record spinning at the wrong speed, until the sound behind them broke loose. That laugh, that wet, crackling laugh, filling the room as the shadows deepened around the pulpit. The thing leaned into the frame, its spiral eyes burning through the static, and then I heard it. Not muffled, not distorted. Clear, directed at me. "Do you remember, boy? The night you left him out in the cold?" "Oh, I do." Stan stiffened beside me. He looked at me, waiting for me to explain, but my throat had locked shut. The thing kept laughing, its jagged rows of teeth clicking like glass tapping together. Poor puppy, scratching at the door, whining and whining. But you were so mad, weren't you? You thought, let him stay out, serves him right. I shook my head before I even realized I was doing it, whispering, "Stop." But the demon only leaned closer, the camera shaking like it couldn't contain its shape. "And he cried for you," it hissed. "He cried until he didn't anymore. He curled up by the step, little breaths slowing, slower and slower and slower, and you never opened the door." Stan whispered, "What is it talking about?" His eyes were wide, locked on me now, not the screen. I couldn't answer him. I couldn't breathe. The memory I'd buried for years, the one I'd never told a soul, was unspooling in front of us, and the thing was enjoying it. It clapped its long hands together, fingers too many and too thin, like a child delighted with its own cruel game. "Oh, the look on your face in the morning," it shrieked, wheezing laughter rattling like knives in a jar. "When you opened the door and found him stiff as stone. You carried that forever, didn't you, boy?" I felt sick. I wanted to scream, to shut the TV off, to run out of the room, but the thing was still leaning closer. The spirals in its eyes spun faster, drawing my vision into them until I could feel it behind me, breathing on the back of my neck. Stan stumbled backward, his chair scraping the floor, his voice breaking. Jesus Christ, what the fuck is that? He was trembling, staring at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. But the demon wasn't interested in him. Its teeth flashed, endless rows splitting into new rows, and it whispered through the static, "You never told, you never confessed. But I know. I'll always know. And now, so does he." Stan kept staring at me like he was waiting for me to deny it, like maybe I'd laugh it off and tell him it wasn't true, but I couldn't move. The thing on the screen was laughing too hard for me to even think straight. "He begged, boy. He begged for you with every whimper, his little paws on the door, his little breath fogging the air, and you lay in bed, angry, pretending not to hear." "Oh, I heard." Its voice shifted higher, mocking, turning sing-song like a cruel nursery rhyme. "Cold, cold, cold, colder still, and all alone he lay so still." The teeth chattered together in rhythm and the static buzzed like applause. Stan muttered, "Jesus Christ, what the fuck is this?" His voice cracked in a way I'd never heard before. He wasn't asking me anymore. He was asking the air, the house, the thing itself. The demon leaned further forward. The spirals in its eyes spun faster, tugging at my stomach until I thought I'd throw up. Its voice softened into something playful, like it was sharing a private joke. "And the best part, boy? You never told anyone. You carried it like a stone in your chest all these years, pretending to forget, but I've been watching. I was there when he froze. I was there when you cried. And I'll be here when you break." I clutched my knees so tight my fingernails dug into my skin. My mouth was dry, my chest tight, and the sound of its laughter shook through the floorboards like nails being dragged through wood. Stan shouted, "Turn it off! Turn it the fuck off!" He lurched forward, reaching for the plug, but the TV snapped brighter, the screen flaring white until it burned shapes into our eyes. The preacher was still at the pulpit, mouthing silent words now. The demon had taken center stage. It bent its long frame across the preacher like a cloak, its teeth grinning wide enough to stretch ear to ear. "Do you feel him, boy? Right outside? Every night you hear the whine, don't you? Every scrape at the door? He's waiting where you left him, cold, alone, and he's so very hungry." I screamed, louder than I thought I could. Stan froze where he stood, his face twisted with something between horror and pity. He turned to me, his lips trembling like he wanted to say something, but the demon's laughter swallowed his words whole. The spirals in its eyes weren't just spinning now. They were widening, pushing closer, stretching beyond the frame. The flicker of the lights matched the pull in my chest, like my heart was being dragged across the room toward the screen. "Come closer, boy," it whispered. "It's time you learned what happens when secrets rot too long in the dark." The screen pulsed once, hard enough that the whole room seemed to lurch. A spiderweb crack spread across the glass, splintering outward in jagged lines. Before either of us could move, the TV buckled inward, glass falling not onto the carpet, but vanishing into the screen like stones dropping into water. There were no wires behind it, no circuitry. Just a blackness so deep it felt like standing at the edge of a well at midnight. The whine at the door cut off mid-breath. The frost on the window panes climbed higher, each filament crawling toward the ceiling like veins. The temperature plummeted, our breath hanging in front of our faces. Stan grabbed my arm, whispering my name, but his voice sounded far away, muffled under a sound like air being sucked through a hole. The void inside the TV wasn't empty. Spirals of pale light shifted deep within it, spinning in slow, nauseating patterns like looking down a drain that never ended. The demon's laughter rolled out of it now, clear and soft and everywhere at once. "Come closer, boy," it hissed. The floorboards trembled beneath us, a low groan rising from the wood as if the house itself were holding its breath. Stan shouted, "Turn it off!" But there was nothing left to turn off. The TV was gone. Only the void remained, black and endless, framed by the shards of glass. For a heartbeat, I swore I heard claws at the edge, faint scratching, a thin whine threading through the cold, so close it could have been inside the room. I turned, but there was nothing, only frost, only shadows. When I looked back, the void didn't move. It didn't grow. It was just there, a hole where the world ended, and then the broadcast ended. The blackness folded back into the shattered screen, leaving only jagged glass and silence behind. Story 2. I bought a haunted television. I'm something of a collector. If it's strange, if it's cursed, if it's twisted, haunted, or tinged with the supernatural in any way, then I want it. I've been actively collecting for a few years now, so my house plays host to all sorts of unique artifacts. I've got everything from a book that drives readers insane, haven't got around to reading it yet, to a Dybbuk box, a real one I swear, to a unicorn skull, bigger than you'd think. So many treasures to study and admire. But my recent favorite by far is the television. It was my friend Liza who sold the television to me, though she tried to talk me out of it. It wasn't even what I was originally there for. See, Liza's a collector and seller of obscure antiques and rare items, and in her work it's not uncommon for her to stumble on something right up my alley. Sometimes she saves these things for the Velvet Room auctions, but sometimes she'll save one special for me and ring me up to have a look. That Friday morning a few weeks ago, she'd left me a message about coming to see a vintage book of spells supposedly kept by Jack Parsons. I already have an entire bookcase of just spell books, but given that Parsons was an occultist of notoriety, I was intrigued by it for its historical significance. So I threw on some clothes, told the dog to keep an eye out while I was gone, and drove on over to Liza's. An hour later, my truck was parked outside her unreasonably large house, the sort of Victorian Gothic monstrosity out in the countryside that you'd expect an antique collector to go gaga for. She opened the front door before I'd even made it to the porch steps and ushered me in with a bright smile. Her brown hair was done up in soft curls, and she wore the same ruby-red lipstick and midnight eyeliner that she always did to age up her baby-faced features a bit and look her 30 years. She says it helps clients take her more seriously. We hugged, caught up a bit. As usual, she had tea and cookies ready for me in her sitting room. We chatted and sipped on a vintage Narcissus surrounded by Liza's numerous odds and ends, our conversation punctuated by the ticks of her 3 grandfather clocks. After catching up, Liza sent me to wash my hands and had the book waiting for me when I returned. I began inspecting it, taking mental notes of the quality of preservation and the added value of Parsons' handwritten notes in the margins. "So where'd you find this gem, Liz?" I asked as I thumbed through it. "Oh, I bought it off a collector upstate," she said. "It came in a bundle with a few other things. I really only wanted the seance table, but the seller insisted that it was to be sold with the other items." "Why? Is it all part of a set?" "Certainly not. None of it relates to each other at all. But the collector's in the process of selling his entire collection, and he's made it clear he's in a rush to do so. I get the sense he's selling in bundles just to get rid of things as quickly as possible." I looked up from the spellbook, surprised. "He's selling his whole collection? That's pretty extreme. Is he moving out of the country or something?" Liza grinned wryly. Well, he's a believer in the supernatural, like you. From what I gleaned in conversation, he got his hands on a few items that spooked him silly, and now he wants nothing to do with any of it. A little thrill ran through me. An item that could scare a man so badly he'd sell off his whole collection, no doubt years upon years worth of work, had to be something juicy. Were any of those spooky items included in the bundle you bought by chance? I asked Liza, looking around. Hmm, there was one included that he was complaining about. I put it here somewhere. Ah, there. Lisa walked across the sitting room, heels clacking on the floor. Nestled between the aforementioned seance board and a potted Norfolk pine was a squat object draped in a sheet. Liza pulled the sheet off to reveal the television. It was an old, black, boxy model, the kind you might have had in the early 90s and small enough to comfortably carry. A TV? I asked. Really? That scared him. Liza laughed. I had to do a bit of prying to get it out of him, but he claimed he could hear demons through it or something like that, and insisted it can't be left on for long. Imagine. Voices from the other side reaching out through the TV. A quintessentially modern ghost tale. I think the poor guy got carried away with some whiskey while flicking through channels is all. So you don't believe him? I don't. Liza shot me an amused look. But I'm guessing you do. Let's just say I'm curious. Curious enough that I'll buy it along with this, I said, closing the spell book. 5,000 for the book, and I'll throw in 1,000 for the TV. Liza's eyes went wide. AC, darling, I can't let you do that. The book, sure, but the TV is junk. Believe me, I've had it sitting here a week and I haven't heard any demonic voices. I was going to take it to the dump tomorrow. Nevertheless, I want it. It's a waste of space. It barely even turns on. Still want it? For goodness sake, you ridiculous creature. If you really want the damn thing, at least let me give it to you free, Liza said, exasperated. I can't have you blowing $1,000 for nothing on my conscience. And if this is the real deal, I can't have cheating you out of its value on my conscience. I carefully set the book down on the table and pulled my checkbook out of my pocket. I ignored Liza's continued protests and wrote out a check for $6,000. Say whatever you want, Liz, but my mind's made up. This baby's coming home with me. Midge! I called out to my dog as I hauled the TV through the front door, with Parsons' wrapped book on top of it. I slammed the door shut behind me with my foot and called again. Midge, come down. Seconds later, I heard the staccato beats of Midge's paws bounding down the stairs as she ran to greet me. Midge is a mutt, mid-sized with soft yellow fur and the cutest curlicue tail you ever saw. That's not why I picked her out at the pound, though. What really makes Midge special is her left eye, milky white and blind. Over the last 2 years, it served me as wonderfully as I hoped. It sees things before I do. Good girl, Midgie. I cooed down at her, carrying the TV into my study. She trotted by my side with her tail wagging. I got us something real neat from Liza today, and I'd like you to help me take a look if you don't mind. I set the TV down on my desk, sweeping aside old papers and journals. I put the new spell book with the rest in the library, then came back and plugged in the TV, feeling ready to burst with giddiness. The TV crackled to life, its thick glass screen filling with gray static. I turned the volume up high and stared at that little square of static with anticipation, and stared, and stared, and stared some more. It briefly occurred to me that I may indeed have just blown $1,000. Midge was behind me, idly sniffing around at some taxidermied specimens I had behind the study door. Midge, come here! I called her over, impatient. She hurried over and licked my palm. I crouched down next to her, scratching behind her ear as I pointed up at the TV. See anything? Midge's gaze followed my direction, her good eye and blind eye both fixed on the screen. A few seconds passed without her reacting. She blinked her good eye. Then she went dead still. She continued staring up at the screen, her lips curling up to bare her teeth as she let loose a low, ragged growl. The TV speakers sparked and fizzed, prompting her to growl louder. Her ears went back and she barked viciously up at the TV. I burst into a smile and scratched behind her ear again. I grabbed her a treat from the bag on my desk and gave it to her. Good girl, Midge. Very, very good girl. Now run on upstairs. Midge, protective though she may be, was only too happy to obey that command. She zoomed out of the study so fast you'd think she was the Flash. I stood up and grinned at the TV with a little wave. Howdy! Nothing but static. There's no use hiding. I leaned in closer. I know you're in there. How's about a little chat? Static. I heard you're the talkative type, so go on. Talk. I'd be very interested in what you have to say. I grabbed a nearby notebook and pen. Static. All right, have it your way. You'll want to talk eventually. I shrugged with a sigh and turned to leave the room. I glanced back at it over my shoulder just before walking out. If there's anything you and I have in common, it's that we've both got all the time in the world. I left the study door open and the TV on the rest of the day, waiting for whatever was in there to reach out. All throughout the house, I could hear the faint crackle of static as I went about doing chores and working on projects. Midge didn't venture downstairs once. The sun went down. Once darkness fell in and around the house, I finally heard it. A single raspy hello from the study. I grabbed my notebook and pen and ambled over, triumphant. I walked into the study and shut the door behind me. The study light was off, so the only light in the room came in the form of the TV's cold, blue-tinged glow. The air swelled with the relentless fizz of static. I stepped closer, squinting into the senseless visual noise that continued to play within the cramped confines of the TV screen. After a moment of staring, I saw a faint shape hidden in the static. The barest outlines of a head, a nose, a mouth. Ready to chat? I asked it. My own voice sounded alien among the sound of static. The head tilted. Who are you? Its voice sounded borderline feminine, yet hollow and discordant, like corrupted audio. Just a friendly collector and inquirer, I said, flipping the notebook open to scribble notes and observations. I would never be stupid enough to give this thing my name. The better question is, who are you? A demon? A ghost? The voice hesitated before answering. I'm a movie star. I paused in my writing. Pardon? I was in the movies, it said faintly, then with more conviction. Yes, I was in the movies, with all the power of a million eyes on me. That is indeed a lot of power, but I need a more specific detail to buy that claim, like your name. It twitched. I don't remember. What a shame. What do you remember then? I remember the table, the five-pointed star carved into it to mirror the black sun. I remember the blood-tempered blade. I remember the television on and hooked to the camera so I could catch the moment forever. I remember I wanted more. More of what? More of everything, of course. More roles in more films, better ones, more exposure. My name on more tongues and my eyes and more dreams, more knowledge. To know and be known is power. Rai Geech T. Think I'm getting the picture here. I grinned and tapped my pen against my chin. Toying with forces you thought you could control, fumbling the ritual. You wouldn't be the first. So what sacrifice did you try to get away with half-assing? The face contorted briefly into something hideous, its features screwing tightly toward the center before it smoothed itself back into neutrality. I was arrogant as you are once. I was foolish and small before I was in here. Where exactly is in here? I tapped the screen glass. The figure within recoiled. Come inside and see, it whispered. I chuckled and shook my head. That's no answer. How about hell? Is it hell? Hell is many places. Hell is far away and all around and very close. The mouth opened wide into a silent scream. The earth is just one pocket with its own rules. Those mewling writings of the Bible's hell are children's fairy tales beside what truly lies just beside your world. In some worlds, all is flesh. In some, nothing is. In some, you breathe the dark in your lungs like water, always drowning but never dying. In some, you are the blood-raw fruit growing along the branch, hanging precariously by a vein, miles and miles high, waiting to be plucked. There are worlds of watching shadows and blinking eyes, worlds I cannot make you understand with mere words. They are pressing against the soft boundaries of yours, gnawing gently at the skin. You are frightened. Not at all. I continued writing down her words. I see it through the glass. Your heart is beating faster. The other, I told, was frightened too, so frightened he screamed himself hoarse by the 10th night. But you don't need to be frightened. Once you get used to the pain, it is beautiful. I'm not too proud to admit that something about the way it spoke unnerved me. Speaking to a spirit, or whatever this former human was now, I expected wrath, confusion, threats, incomprehensible wails. Yet the calm with which it spoke as it described all this felt out of place, sincere. I can show you. I can show it all to you. I'd like to see. I glanced down at the TV controls. Do I have to switch channels or something? Come inside and see, it said, or else I must come out to show you. Yeah, nice try, I snorted. How about you just show me from over there? I have told you your two choices. Hard pass on both. Let me show you. I want to show you. Then find another way. There is no other way. There is no easy way, it breathed. It is the lesson I have learned well. Nothing is given without something taken, but I swear to you the sacrifice is always worth it. The pain is exquisite. I'll take your word for it. Look, if you won't show me anything from this other world, let's circle back to your life. How'd you get mixed up in occultism? When you got locked in during the ritual, did anything from the other side escape? Static. Oh, so we're back to the silent treatment. The mouth closed. Fine by me. Like I said earlier, we've got plenty of time. You just let me know when you feel like talking again. I snapped my notebook shut with a yawn and slipped it onto the desk beside the television. Been a long day. I, for one, am heading to bed. I'll swing back around in the morning to check up on you. Good night. I left the television on, the volume up, and the door open, in case it wanted or needed to call to me in the middle of the night. I then went upstairs to bed, the sound of static growing quieter behind me. At around 3 in the morning, I woke to the sound of Midge's low growls. I sat up groggily, barely out of the daze of sleep. Midge was on the foot of the bed with her back to me. Her hackles were raised and her ears pinned back as she growled at the open doorway. I rubbed my eyes and looked ahead. As far as I could see, there was only the darkness of the hallway wall. But there was also the sound of static, just a little louder than before. I went still. Midge's growls grew louder as she glared at the doorway. So too did the static, then a little louder and a little louder. A blue glow, so faint I very nearly couldn't see it, shined out of sight down the end of the hall where the stairs would be. As the static continued to grow louder, the blue glow continued to grow brighter, and Midge's growling grew desperate and more frantic, her entire body trembling. Louder, brighter, louder, brighter, louder, brighter. And then it was standing in the doorway. I froze in place, my stomach lurching as I stared at what had escaped the TV. I trembled as badly as Midge. It was a faint, ever-shifting shape, all draped in static. There were the barest outlines of a head, a nose, a mouth. All else was impossible to describe. Anywhere my eye settled on it, the image grew blurry and discombobulated. There was a constant visual flux that gave me the sense that it was not the thing before me that failed to be seen, but my own primitive eyes that could not process the sight. It moved closer until it was inches from the foot of the bed. Behind it, flat blots of static writhed on the floor. "Let me show you," it breathed. "I want to show you." I snapped out of it then. I grabbed Midge and bolted out of bed as the thing lurched forward onto the bed, running around it into the hall. The hallway and stairs were peppered with those strange blots, and I did my best to avoid them as I ran downstairs to the front door. I threw it open and practically chucked Midge out. I swung it shut and locked myself in before she could dart back in after me. "Truck!" I yelled at her through the door. She whined for a second but made for the truck bed when I repeated the command. By that time, a blue glow was already casting my shadow on the door. The thing from the TV dragged itself down the stairs toward me, looking as though every step it took was excruciatingly painful. I grabbed the closest thing to me, a boot from the shoe rack, and hurled it at the thing as hard as I could, hoping to throw it off balance. Instead, the boot sailed clean through the thing's center, disappearing into the static. Excellent. That did nothing. I cursed under my breath and dashed to the living room with my hunter in close pursuit. The static blots were everywhere there, pulsating. The sound was deafening, unbearable. A ceaseless crescendo of noise. The only thing I could think to do was get to the TV in the study. I had a wild hope that if I altered it somehow, whether that meant fiddling with the controls or unplugging it, that might be enough to sever whatever access the being had to this world. But those goddamn fucking blots. I had to weave and hop and hug the wall just to avoid them, slowing me down and making me easier prey for the thing that followed. I could hear its hollow breathing just behind me. My lungs heaved and my heart thundered as leapt over blot after blot, until finally I was at the threshold of the study. On the desk, the TV glowed blank and blue, but it seemed I was too slow. Before I could even step through the door frame, something came down on my left shoulder and held me in place. I turned my head instinctively to look and saw buzzing static where my shoulder should have been. An unspeakable cold washed over my arm, worse than if I'd sunk it bare into snow. I felt myself turned around to face a head, a nose, a mouth. It leaned in close enough to block out the sight of anything else. My eyes ached from trying to see it. "Let me show you." It shifted to hold my head in place. With my right hand, I grabbed the door frame. I thought maybe I could use it as leverage to pull myself out of the thing's grip. But even as I tensed to tighten my grip, the thing was already leaning in closer until the world went dark and the cold washed over my head. And it was an unspeakable cold, the kind of cold born from nothingness, the kind of cold that occurs when all the atoms of the universe hang still in suspension. The void of interstitial space, and pulsing in the pockets of infinity, there were worlds. My eyes did not fail me now. I could see impossibly far into whichever one I liked. As promised, I saw the lands of flesh, planet-sized organisms that writhed in the smoldering heat of black stars. I saw the dead worlds, flat and barren lands that stretched on forever into the dark. I saw the black viscous oceans. I saw the living bodies that grew upon behemoth trees, agony-struck eyes staring up as they waited second by excruciating second. I saw the deep dreams and the uncoiling memories of the dead. I saw alien empires of gods, I saw you as you will be, as you could be, as you shouldn't be. I was torn apart and fused back together, and torn and fused, on and on as my body screamed and as I looked at it all. Everything that was mystery, that was forbidden, that was deranged and profane and indecipherable and bloody born and backward, everything that was terrifying and exquisite was right there for me to see at my leisure. I could have stayed there forever, but I could still feel my hand gripping the doorframe. I tightened my grip on it, used it to pull myself backward, and I was back in the study, face to face with the creature. I was sick to my stomach, my head reeling from the intense cold and the visions, but I had just barely enough presence of mind to move. I turned and lunged for the TV, the thing behind me lurching to grab me again. I grabbed the TV with what little strength I still had and held it in front of me like a shield as the thing threw itself at me with a faint scream. The scream was muffled as the thing collided with the TV screen, halfway inside the TV. Catching on, I thrust the television further over the entity, forcing it back inside. I had to throw my entire body weight over the back of the TV to first fully engulf the entity, then to keep it trapped inside, holding the TV screen down on the study floor. The thing continued to scream and rage inside as I extended my leg and hooked my ankle around the television cord. I then yanked it from the outlet. The noise stopped. The TV went still. All was quiet and dark in my house again. So, lesson learned, I will not leave the television on overnight again. The blots that my otherworldly visitor trailed throughout the house are gone, though they left black spots on my carpet that will have to be steam cleaned out. Midge remains so freaked by the experience that she still won't even go near my regular TV. As for the haunted one, it still turns on and still shows static, though I have not seen the entity that inhabited it since that first night. Whether it's purposely hiding itself or it's lost in some other world, I can only guess. I've been researching who it might have been when it was human, no leads so far. But despite everything, I count this as a win. I'm sure that with a little repair and experimentation, I'll be able to use that TV to see into those other worlds from a safe distance. I can't wait to see it all again. Once you get used to the pain, it is beautiful. Story 3. An old TV played the outcome of the choices I didn't make. Have you ever laid awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what your life would be like if you had made different decisions? If you had gone left instead of right, if you had no instead of yes? Do you wonder how big or small these choices needed to be in order to affect your life? Could something as simple as stopping for a moment to tie your shoe send your whole life onto an alternate path? Could something as severe as a job change ultimately bring you to the same place as if you never left your previous job? I'm sure we've all heard of the butterfly effect. The idea that if you could go back in time and alter your decisions, that it would alter the course of your life for better or worse. Like something as small as the butterfly's wings could cause hurricanes hundreds of miles away. It's an idea that always presents itself in fantasy, but we seldom think about how we who are in the present are those butterflies, always fluttering our wings, changing not only our lives and our day-to-day choices, but the lives around us alter forever. I would always lay awake and wonder, what if, until my brain went numb and I eventually drifted off to sleep. Just like the butterfly effect, though, these thoughts only existed inside a bubble of fantasy that popped whenever the sun rose. The thoughts plagued me for many nights, but they were always just flights of fancy. I always thought that if I did have the power to change things, that I would opt not to. It's a lot of responsibility to alter your life and by proxy others, and a lot of arrogance to assume you'd make anything better. Sometimes I would think about what would happen if I was able to go back and urge my mother to see a doctor faster. If we were able to detect her illness before it got too bad, before she would eventually have to be moved into hospice. I don't know what was harder, seeing her leave her own home on a stretcher or packing up her belongings. As I put things into boxes, I would have brief memories of my childhood. Each object I touched, I could remember my hands, much smaller hands, running over the object trying to discover how it worked. Mom always loved how curious I was, said I was going to solve the world's mysteries someday. The memories faded, though. Every time I placed something into a cardboard box, I had to stifle the memory and move on. I don't even remember grabbing the TV, one of those old TVs that had layers of static over whatever you were watching. I just remember my forehead hitting the curved glass, my fingers wrapping around the side of it. The air in the house was so still it felt like the world had stopped moving just to let me sit in the moment. The corners of my mouth dropped like fishing hooks were dragging them down. My fingers shook, rattling the TV against my forehead. No words came out, rather, my throat made sounds as I tried to choke back my emotions. Sitting on my knees with my head pressed against the TV, I let those emotions flood into me and they all spilled out through my tear ducts. Rivers running down my face and dropping onto the white carpet below. After however long, with my throat hoarse and my face drying, I was able to pick myself up from the carpet and put everything away. I had scheduled movers to come by and take care of some of the heavier stuff. They were supposed to take the TV, but I decided to hang on to it. Putting it into my car, I drove home and let it sit in the middle of my living room, not wanting to drag it anywhere else. The day had already been long enough. I made my way up to bed, exhausted and worried. I watched the ceiling. The room was dark and the view above me looked infinite, and my mind began to wander to memories. Memories of the time I had spent with my mother in the past year. Times where I would look at her, see the gloss in her eyes, or the way she moved across a room, and just tell myself she was getting old. All the crimson flags I personally watched hoisted high into the air yet ignored. Those flags are all I can see now. Armies of misinterpreted signs of aging marching across the battlefield. All my failings hoisted high. Raising my arms, I crossed them over my eyes, a different kind of infinity, one I could fall asleep in. I wasn't able to see the sunrise immediately, but enough of it was able to creep under my arms to create a pink sliver of light. Moving my arms, I saw the infinity was gone, and I crawled out of bed to get ready to see my mom. My house felt just as still as hers was, especially when I made it downstairs and I saw her TV sitting in the living room, reflecting the room and myself on its black screen. Pulling myself away, I headed into my car and started driving. On the way, I looked down and noticed the needle on my fuel gauge drifting towards empty. I thought for a moment about whether I could make it to the hospice and back with what I had left. I didn't want to waste my limited visiting hours waiting for my gas to fill, but it was a close call. Ultimately, I pulled into a gas station and pressed the nozzle into my car. Squeezing the pump, I watched the small digital numbers climbing higher and higher. Mom always used to try and get it to hit 20 exactly, and it's one of those habits I kind of just mindlessly try to replicate. I watched the numbers blur together, and releasing the handle revealed that I had missed the mark, digital numbers reading $22.35. Paying my total, I once again got on the road. Part of me was dreading seeing her, at least seeing her in a place like that anyway. It was like accepting that it was real and I didn't want to do it. Maybe that's why I stopped for gas. Just to delay it for a moment. Once I got there, though, it sunk into me how this was reality. It was exactly like I was worried it would be. Sitting at the side of her bed as she laid on her back looking towards the ceiling, felt like she wasn't even there. Thoughts of her flying over cityscapes filled my mind. I could feel her, though, the heat her hands were giving off when I placed mine over them. A horrible feeling of guilt riddled my brain, and I wished more than anything I had a way to do things better, that I could get her help, not just some bed. Time seemed to move fast in there. Almost as soon as I saw her, I was walking out of the building and heading back home. I was surprised to see that as I pulled up to the driveway where there was a light emitting from inside my living room. It was soft and blue, flicking in and out like something was passing in front of it. I turned off my headlights and watched the display from my driveway before getting the courage to step out of the car. Slowly, I walked up my steps and walked across the porch to try and peek through the curtains. My heart rattled as I looked inside my house to find that the old cathode ray TV in the middle of the room was on. The rest of the house was dark, and I didn't hear any source of movement, but watching the TV, it was clear the nature of the old TV was causing the flickering light. Unlocking my front door, I stepped inside and looked at the TV with the same skepticism I would give an intruder. Like the thing had violated my privacy. I could feel myself unintentionally keeping my distance from it like I was worried it would attack me. Closing the door slowly and turning on the lights, I felt myself a little more at ease and able to approach the TV. Thought with the lights on, I was able to see very clearly that the plug for the TV was still resting on top of it. I tried to figure out why the TV would be on, wondering if something like a residual electrical charge was a thing. As my finger started to press down on the power button, the snowstorm of static on the TV started to shift. It should have been impossible for the TV to be picking up on any kind of signal. Even so, an image began to form on the screen. Dumbfounded, I rested my finger on the power button, interested in what shapes would be revealed behind the static. I thought that perhaps I had fallen asleep. Maybe too tired to get out, I passed out in my car and was still sitting in the driveway because what I was seeing had to be a dream. The static was clear enough for me to see an overhead shot of an instantly recognizable car driving down a very familiar street. The camera angle shifted like it was on a dolly until I was able to get a glimpse of the driver inside. Turning my head, I looked at the living room around me, feeling much more alien than before. I observed every nook and cranny, every spot of light, and every shade of darkness looking for anything out of place. Thinking maybe someone was somehow messing with me, or perhaps there was some otherworldly creature watching me. There was nothing, though, just me and the TV that I was pulling my attention back to. I watched bewildered, able to see myself driving. I shifted my vision for a moment to my arm and realized I and the me that was on the TV were wearing the same thing. I saw myself look down at the car's dashboard and let out a sigh. It dawned on me I was seeing myself from earlier the same day. Out of the window of my car, I could see the gas station that I stopped at earlier, but instead of stopping, the TV showed me driving by it. The version of myself that I was watching on TV had decided to not stop. The scene changed and it was darker. I watched from the car window as I left the hospice and entered the vehicle. Sitting in my living room watching myself, it felt like someone had injected me with some nerve-numbing agent. I just couldn't pull myself away from the screen. As absurd as the vision was, I needed to know how it played out. Deciding to not stop at the gas station. As the version of me on the screen drove home, he looked down at the meter again and must have noticed the gas was running lower than he thought. There was a heavy sigh from him that seemed to stir up the static like it was reacting to the sound. The same gas station came into view and he started pulling into it and rested the car next to the same pump that I had used earlier in the day. He started to exit the car and the view followed after him until I was able to see myself standing there filling up the car. I was surrounded by the yellow glow of the gas station's overhead lights. I could see in my eyes that I was drained. Even through the static, I could feel that the copy of myself on the screen was staring off into infinity. His mind was emptied and his actions aimless, and I wondered what had happened to me in the hospice that drained me like that. With his fist still clenched tight, he started pulling the nozzle out of the car, and as he carelessly pulled it loose, he slipped. A part of the nozzle scraped against the car as he tried to get his footing, causing a small spark to appear. It was tiny, but against the white static, I could see a speck of red drift and make contact with the still flowing gas. There was a flash, the whole screen engulfed in a bright yellow. A noise rang out, a loud bang as if someone had put a magnum right next to my ear and pulled the trigger. I reacted by throwing myself backward away from the TV as the thing had just snipped at me. Fingers spread on the carpet and a ringing in my ear, I stared at the TV that had returned to the dark screen it had when I left in the morning. Again, the screen sat there looking like the ceiling of my bedroom always had, a land of endless possibilities. I had just seen what would have happened had I chosen to not get gas. I had seen the outcome of a different decision, and it ended with that. Such a simple choice meant the difference between me making it home or not. There was no way I could sleep. I didn't think I would be able to. I would just sit there wondering what I just witnessed. Instead, I tried to figure it out. I looked over the TV, trying to see if there was some alternate power source. I'm not sure what I was looking for, though. Maybe even the smallest inkling of a rational explanation where there wasn't one. As I stood in the living room staring down at the object in front of me, I considered what I should do with it. I didn't want to throw it out, so I thought it might be okay to just put it in the basement where I could ignore it. But I was too curious, and wondering about the TV felt like the only thing that was keeping my thoughts away from my mother. I even wondered if it would be able to show me what would have happened if I had caught my mother's illness sooner, if I had been better. So I decided to let it be, and maybe I could see a better life for my mother. As I had thought that I wouldn't bring the TV downstairs, it turned on again, calling back the static. Specks of white and black drifted around the screen until the image, as expected, shifted. Though where I was hoping to see my mother, I instead saw my living room, with me standing in front of the TV. Biting my nail, I watched as I leaned down and grabbed the sides of the TV before hoisting it in the air. And I realized what I was watching. This was the timeline where I had chosen to take the TV into the basement. I looked over at the basement door several feet away from me and then back at the TV. The copy of myself made his way over to the same door, resting the TV on his forearms to free a hand that was able to turn the handle. The basement door swung open, and with a careful flick of a nearby switch, I saw light emit from the doorway. Slowly, the copy of myself stepped down the stairs, trying not to topple over, but I knew he was shaken from what he just watched. I know because I was still shaken. I couldn't understand why I would immediately need to put the TV in the basement. It could have waited. Right? If I had decided to bring it downstairs, could I have waited? The camera followed behind me, and from over my copy's shoulder, I could see the cord on top of the TV slide off, but my copy couldn't. There was a soft thud as the cord landed on the wooden step, and when my copy tried to shift to see the source of the noise, his foot landed on the cord and his ankle rolled in response. It all happened entirely too fast. With his foot still holding the cord down, my copy started to fall forward. The TV came loose from his hands and he tried to grab the nearby railing, but his momentum was too much to brace. He fell over the TV and flipped down the wooden stairs, twisting his arm behind him. I could hear each impact as his body tumbled to the bottom of the steps. When he hit the bottom, I could see that the arm that had twisted on the way down was poking out at an odd angle, like the shoulder had been pulled from its socket. He shifted, trying to make it back to the steps, but clearly labored by the pain, his movements were slow. With his head resting on the final step, the camera focused in on his face. Ho's mouth opened as he breathed, trying his best to catch a decent breath. His face squinted as he struggled to move, letting out noises I remember hearing when I cried in front of the TV not too long ago. Then I remember the TV at the top of the stairs in that universe, the TV that no longer had him holding the cord in place. There were two soft thuds that crescendoed into louder banging as the TV gained speed, rolling down the stairs. I could see in my eyes the understanding he had. This was the same me that saw myself die at the gas station, the same me that knew what the TV showed me. It was just that me that decided to take the TV downstairs. There was a moment of silence as my copy started to move, trying to avoid what was coming. But before he could even lift his head off the step, I saw the TV crash down right on the back of his neck. With his chin on the step, the TV pressed down hard. The copy's body went limp immediately. The TV, the same TV I was watching this all unfold on, rolled off of him, crashing to the basement floor beside him, both dead and broken. I can't explain why that was the breaking point, but I felt my stomach churn. Hot acid climbed my throat. I was going to throw up, but I wasn't going to be able to make it to the bathroom. I ran to the kitchen, trying not to look at the basement door. It felt like I was down there, like I remembered being down there just seconds ago. As I tumbled into the kitchen, I looked at the sink and then the garbage can, ultimately deciding I couldn't make it to the sink and threw up into the trash. It all came out so fast that I barely made it. Warm chunks of my meal spilling into the garbage can, spilling on the very same cardboard boxes that housed the food previously. Once I finished up, I went over to the sink and let my mouth fill with cool water, drowning out the grit of my vial. With most but not all of the taste gone, I started to walk away from the sink when I heard a crash come from my living room, a sound similar to when my body hit the floor in the basement. Looking over, I could see on my kitchen counter there was a knife on the edge that I forgot to put into the sink, and before I even made it to the living room, I knew what I was going to see. On the TV, I saw myself, the version of me that decided to try and make it to the sink so he could just rinse the sick away. The version of me that stumbled as he struggled to hold it in, and as he did so, braced his hand on the counter. Instead of gripping the counter, though, his fingers laced around the knife. The very same knife that I saw sticking out of my throat on the TV as the life drained from my copy's body. Then, when life left his eyes, the TV turned on. I walked over slowly and knelt in front of the TV, placed my fingers on the side of it and my forehead on the glass. So very tired, I sat there as the static roared to life once more and shifted into an image of my mother and me. I was younger on TV. I could tell from my appearance that stress hadn't run me ragged yet. That version of me got up and walked over to my mother, told her that he was worried about her health. They got in the car together and started heading to the hospital. I could feel a smile washing over my face. Finally, I was doing something right. Not me exactly, but the version of me on the TV was vigilant enough to see something wrong. The smile faded, though, when we were passing through an intersection and a truck breezed through the light, killing us both on impact. The static returned and my fingers clenched. Anger swelled over me, causing every nerve in my body to run rampant. I wanted to see myself fix things. Another image of me and my mother appeared in another instance where I decided we needed to see a doctor. This time, though, there was an accident in the hospital that led to my mother dying right there and then. Pulling back my head, I slammed it back forward, feeling my skull bounce against the hard glass. Another image, another choice, another death. This time I died choking on food, waiting for my mother's results. My hand, no longer grabbing the TV, was balled up and swung forward, pinging against the TV as I screamed in defiance. Over and over, I hit the TV. Over and over, I watched either me or my mom pass away, as all my past choices led to one or both of our ends. My knuckles split over, spilling red onto the TV screen every time I made an impact, but I couldn't feel it. I just wanted to see a world where I did the right thing, but every single outcome just took her away from me sooner. Nothing got better. I had to watch us die dozens of times. I only noticed how much I'd been screaming when my jaw became sore, or how much I'd been crying until the taste of salt filled my mouth. "Please stop," I said, lowering my fist to the crimson-stained carpet below. Red flags, I had missed them all. and then my carpet became soaked in them. The TV, almost as if it was responding to me, turned off. All I could see in it now was myself, but this time it was just a reflection of me sitting broken inside the infinity. Time doesn't stand still, though. At some point, I had to get up. I had to wrap the mangled hand, and at some point, the sun had to rise. When it did, I got a call, a nurse telling me that my mother was in a critical condition, that they didn't think she had much time left. I was out of the door as quick as I could be, offering a cursory glance as I passed the gas station. As I arrived, I was led to my mother's room. They said they had taken her off machines and drugs so she was lucid enough to speak. That if I wanted to say goodbye, it was time, and then it was just me and her. I sat beside her as she turned her head to look at me, offering a smile that was far too warm for this world. "What happened to your hand?" She said it like she had all the time in the world. I raised it. Red was starting to slip through. "That's not important right now," I replied, reaching out with the hand I hadn't battered against the TV to hold hers. She looked at my face, deep into my eyes in only the way that she could. "It's okay to be sad," she whispered, her voice trailing in and out, a somber gloss pulsing over her words like waves against the sand. With her free hand, she made a gesture, and I bent over, resting my head on her chest as she ran her fingers through my hair. Her breathing was so light I could barely feel it. "I'm so sorry." I could feel my words coming out. They shook something awful, sounding like a jumbled mess. "I couldn't save you," I continued, warm, obnoxious tears plummeting from my eyes, spilling onto her gown. "I couldn't." My words trailed off as I heard a soft breeze of air, her attempt to quiet my troubles. "It's not your fault." I could feel her aged fingertips rub against my scalp like she was trying to mold my brain to take away the pain. "You can't change the channel, dear." My lips stopped quivering as the words came out, and she lifted my head to meet her gaze. "This is the one you're stuck on. You have to see it through." She smiled at me again. She had to have known. I knew that she knew. But through it all, her eyes, heavy and aged, started to close. "My time with you was my favorite show." The smile she had been putting on started to relax as the stiffness her body had before melted away. She was gone. But as I sat there looking at her, I couldn't help but think of when I was cleaning her house. Putting all the things we had both lived with in boxes, remembering all the joy we shared, all the things we did, and even in the rough times, how much she still cared for me. I made a lot of decisions in my life. Not all of them were wise. Some turned out rather horribly, but I think I was seeing them all wrong. Getting to make those decisions beside her, I should have been cherishing that instead of thinking about how to change it. Even if I was missing the red flags, I got to see a lot of those smiles. You have to live with your choices. You can't change the channel. You can only decide what you do moving forward from those choices. You are a butterfly shaping your future. Make decisions you won't regret. And if you do end up making a bad one, there are so many more ahead. The TV sits in my living room still, put in the corner. It hasn't turned on since I came home that day. I don't need to know what my other choices lead me to. I only need to handle the ones I've made. I miss and love you, Mom. Goodbye.